Hello. Welcome, YouTube. I am flattered that once again you would tune in to watch me try to express the haphazard contents of my brain. I'm flattered, really. Okay, last time I made the statement that our modern political systems are built on a foundation of moral hypocrisy, and this may sound like an extreme statement, like I'm trying to sound radical and crazy. Like, what? A foundation of moral hypocrisy? Our entire political systems? That sounds absurd, you say. Well, I think it's a pretty benign statement to make. It's pretty conservative, really. It's a nice way of saying it, I would say. Moral hypocrisy is just where you apply one standard to one group of people and a conflicting moral standard to another group of people. And I will be saying the word moral hypocrisy, or just hypocrisy, a lot, simply because I want a clear and concise way of saying a situation where you apply one moral standard to one group of people and a conflicting moral standard to a different group of people. I want a concise way of saying that, so if it sounds like I'm overusing the word hypocrisy, it's for clarity's sake. And so what I lack in diverse language, I'll make up in clarity. People will use all types of justifications to mask their moral hypocrisy. Off to a good start. But all the gods and governments in the world cannot change what's going on. They cannot change the moral nature of the situation. And I'm going to bring up another term here. I like this term a lot. I heard it used in a movie I saw recently. The logic of war. I think whenever people go to war, they end up entering a new mode of thought where they view the world in a different way, and they don't use moral justifications anymore. They start abandoning moral justifications, and they start being complete moral hypocrites, but they end up justifying and masking their moral hypocrisy with pragmatic arguments. And pragmatic arguments are just where you justify a theory or a method based on their practical application or their usefulness at achieving certain goals. So, a pragmatic argument may be that you want to blow up millions of civilians because it will win the war. You know, you're judging the theory or you're judging the method based on its usefulness at achieving certain goals. So the logic of war is when you are abandoning moral consistency, basically. You're becoming a moral hypocrite, but you're masking it with pragmatic arguments. So you're saying, oh, well, this moral hypocrisy is so useful. Look how useful it is. And you're making people focus on the usefulness of it. And you're saying you're caught up in the necessity. You're always claiming that you're caught up in the necessity for violence, and the necessity for war, and the necessity for future violence, and future torture and murder and enslavement, and you're caught up in the logic of war. So when I say logic of war, it's simply where you are abandoning moral consistency and adopting pragmatic arguments to justify it. Pragmatism is not a bad thing. Let me make that clear too. Pragmatic arguments are just fine. Wanting to achieve your goals is to be expected, and so pragmatic lines of thought would be expected to follow from that. However, people tend to justify institutionalized moral hypocrisy in the long term for pragmatic reasons. That's the difference. We tend to justify prolonged moral hypocrisy, like we're planning to commit moral hypocrisy for hundreds of years for pragmatic reasons. That's different than that's just ridiculous. That is the source of all evil right there. When moral hypocrisy is a foundation of a political system, then moral hypocrisy is easily justified from within that political system. If we look at an ethical framework and it is built on a foundation of moral hypocrisy, then people can just use that ethical framework to justify their moral hypocrisy. Like, bombing people to prevent them from doing something that you have done several times before. Think about that. You have been doing something several times over, and then they try to do it, and you bomb them to prevent them from doing it. That sounds absurd, right? Of course it does. But then we look at our, modern political system, or our modern, geo landscape, whatever you want to call it. I don't know all these big terms. And, America is bombing countries that are trying to get nuclear capability. And, they're not even trying to get nuclear weapons. They're trying to get, as they claim, nuclear power facilities. And America has many, many nuclear weapons. America is the only country who has used nuclear weapons on civilians, obviously, because you can only use nuclear weapons on civilians in the end. It kills so many people. So, it's just ridiculous hypocrisy. Now, in the end, I think masking moral hypocrisy only helps set the precedent that moral hypocrisy is okay, and justifying subsequent moral hypocrisy. And it makes us accustomed to this kind of moral inconsistency. We're very accustomed to it. It's fine for us. It's not pleasant to look at, but our modern political systems are built upon moral hypocrisy. There are institutions that, by their very nature, exist in a kind of constant moral hypocrisy, and most of our modern governments are shining examples of this. So, in my next video, I'm going to talk about a perfect example of this. I mean, there's so much to talk about, so I think that's why we should be talking about it, basically. So if it seems like I'm talking about this a lot, we really should be. We should be talking about this. If this sounds new to you, unless this is all old news to you, then there's a reason we should be talking about it. Peace.